Hello and welcome back to my channel. In this video, I want to talk you through 5 tips for your first few months in consulting if you're about to start or you just started. Based on my experience in a Big Four firm in London, I started in February. I definitely learned a lot of things, and I hope that these 5 tips just make starting in consulting a bit less scary and hopefully a bit easier as well. Number 1, you're gonna hate because you've probably heard it before, and it's networking and how key it is in the first few months. My advice is just to build as many connections as possible in the early months of you starting a job in consulting, because the nature of consulting in a big firm like a Big Four is that you find a lot of things through talking to people, such as your future projects, your side of desk, your potential future friends. It's a long list. In my firm, for example, there is no centralized way of finding a project for your grade that suits your interest and then just getting onto it. Usually it's quite a long process of building your network, and then slowly people start knowing you as the person who is interested in that topic or the person who specializes in this kind of capability within your department. And then kind of projects start coming to you. I'm not at that stage yet, but I am trying to network my way hard into an industry that I'm really interested in, and it's kind of slowly starting to work, but it definitely takes a lot of talking to people, a lot of being on people's radar, and just when something does come up, that they think of you as the obvious person to approach for that. I found so far, in my firm at least, and I don't know if it's a culture thing or if it's a general consulting thing, I found that everyone is very approachable, and there really is a lot of encouragement for people to just connect with other random people in the firm if they're doing something that you're interested in, or they might be in a department you're interested in. So we have an internal portal where you can just look anyone up, kind of like an internal Facebook sort of thing. I would just advise to leverage that as much as possible, and I just realized that I said the most consulting word ever, which is to leverage, but do make use of it, because it genuinely is super useful to just search, I don't know, a term that you're interested in, for example, human-centered design. And then someone will come up because it's in their CV or because it's in their previous project roles. And then you can just connect and say, I'd love to learn more about this. Would you be open to having a quick coffee chat with me and just sharing your experience? And a lot of the time it will be a yes, unless they're very busy, in which case it's understandable. Quite related to that is number 2, and it's don't be intimidated by someone's grade. So if someone is a senior manager, if someone is a partner, they might still be just as approachable, just as friendly, and just as open to talking to you as a person of your grade. And again, it might be a very firm-dependent thing, but so far I found that in a Big Four firm that I'm at, there really is a very non-hierarchical structure. And again, not related to salary, because there it is very much hierarchical. And of course, naturally, people who are more senior will probably have more responsibility and more things to oversee, so they might be busier. They might genuinely have less time available. But if they do, I found that everyone is so approachable, and I've talked to partners, I've talked to senior managers, and I've talked to a bunch of analysts, so it's kind of an equal playing field in a way. And I would just really encourage you not to be shy just because someone is a few grades above you, and to still approach them if you would like to. Tip number 3 is milk the flexibility of consulting. In my experience, and in the experience of people that I've worked with so far, consulting has a lot of waviness when it comes to how busy you are and the workload. So depending on what project you're on, what phase of the project you're in, if you're on the bench or not, you might have a lot of flexibility when it comes to your time. 1, because naturally your workload varies, but also 2, because my firm and a lot of other firms have become way more what is called agile, which is another buzzword, in how they let their employees work. So for example, as long as I deliver everything that I'm supposed to be delivering, and I'm performing at a high standard, and my client work is all good, and everything else is all fine, I am free to take out an hour or 2 and go to a doctor's appointment. Or if you're a parent, you might want to do the school pickup and just take out that chunk of time during the day. As long as your output is up to the standard, no one will really question you, at least in my firm. That's been my experience. And when you have a bit of free time, instead of feeling guilty about it, I would just suggest to really enjoy it and make use of it. Just because over the year, I feel like taking all of the hours variation into account, taking into account all the overworking you will probably do, I think you're completely justified in taking back that time when you can, as long as your work is fine and delivered on time. That would be my personal advice. Maybe it's not the official advice, but I'd say milk the flexibility where you can. Number 4 is time related as well, but it's also well-being related. Tip number 4 is to set boundaries where you need them. For me, this is my dance classes first and foremost, because this is my main week structure that has stayed with me for years now, and I love them. I do it for my physical well-being, my mental well-being, for the community and my friends. So it's a big part of my life and it's very important to me. And whenever I join a new team, and so far I have been part of a few already through my side of desk and through my project and through a bid that I'm working on, and I try to communicate early on that this is something that's very important to me, and I do it on this day and this day, so I will have to log off on time. And so far, everyone has been very accommodating of that and has really tried to let me keep my commitments in place that I really want to keep because they're important to me. I found it to be a very supportive environment, which I did not expect when I was just joining. It was one of my main worries. And again, it does depend on the team you're in, but I've been quite lucky so far. Equally, there have been cases in my firm which I know of where someone did get very burnt out because they worked so much and they were given so much responsibility. And that is such a tricky situation to be in, because sometimes you don't have too much say in what role you're given within the project. So fortunately for me, I've not had to deal with that yet, but I'm aware it does happen and it is very challenging to be in that situation. Just try and stand up for your boundaries as much as you can and really try to keep those commitments, because in the long term, that will just keep you sane, it will keep you happy, and it will keep you healthy as well. And of course, if you are in a tricky situation where it's getting out of hand or it's getting very overwhelming, I think that requires further steps like talking to your manager, talking to your resource manager, bringing it up with someone who will support you through that process, because burnout should not be happening. And if it is, then something needs to happen action-wise to stop that. There are systems in place to support you through challenging situations like that, but it does definitely take a lot of courage and decisiveness to speak up about something like that, especially when you're overwhelmed yourself, you're stressed. Keep supportive people around you who you know are advocates for work-life balance and for boundaries, because there are many, and I think the situation is improving a lot in consulting. And if you are finding yourself in a very tricky situation, try and really ask those people for support to manage that. Tip number 5 is something that I'm in process of doing at the moment, and it's be very, very persistent if you're interested in something within consulting. It's such a broad field. There's literally a ton of things going on that you could be doing. Even within the role that I applied for, there is a ton of sub-offerings, there is a ton of capabilities, there is a million industries that you could be working in, and this is just for one role that I'm in my department. So imagine how much there is in consulting. And you could be working on such a variety of things that if you know that you're interested in something particular, it might still be very challenging to actually get there. Naturally, if you're available for a project, then you might just be staffed on something random because they need an analyst there, because they need a consultant there. And as much as it might feel that an analyst, if you've just started like me, doesn't have much bargaining power, which is sometimes something that I'm kind of conscious of, maybe just keeping it in mind that I did just start, so not been here for too long, and I can't just be saying no left, right, and center. But I think you have to be very persistent about getting somewhere if you really know that you want to try something. If you let it just flow naturally, chances are you won't get there, because it takes being very stubborn, sometimes saying no, and a lot of networking and staying on people's radar so that they actually give you the opportunity when there is a chance. And I guess, as a lot of things, the variety that consulting offers has two sides of the coin. One being that you can really do something that you're really passionate about in an industry you're interested in and with people that you love working with. It also means that because there's so much variety going on, you might just end up in something random, and the further you go along the ladder, the harder it is to switch, just because you build an expertise in something and then you will be more valuable in that industry on those projects that are kind of following on from the ones you've done before. So while you have the flexibility in the first couple of years, especially, really try to be fierce about pursuing something if you already have an interest, or equally, if you know that you want to try a bunch of things, don't let yourself sit just in the one that you were allocated at first, because you might just end up staying there and it will become harder to switch afterwards. So I would say whatever way you want to take it, just be very vocal about it. Speak to your research manager a lot about it. Speak to your direct line manager and just keep pursuing that thing until you actually get there. Because I think if you're persistent enough, you will, but it might take a bit of resisting people pulling you in a different direction. Even though you might be junior at the moment, I think you can still do this, and that's what I'm trying at the moment with getting into media and entertainment, because that is my background and I love the industry. I think that's where I could be more fulfilled within consulting. So I'm hoping to get there, and I am being quite stubborn about it. So let's see how this goes. But those are my 5 tips for your first few months in consulting if you were just starting or you were interested in starting. If you have any questions, as always, ask me in the comments and I'll get back to you. And I'll see you in the next video.